Good morning, everyone. I'm Meredith Laurelier, Executive Vice President of the Chamber of Commerce, Southern New Jersey. It is my pleasure to welcome you to our first virtual TD Bank Executive Series event, and thank you for tuning in. We are delighted to feature Frank Rizzieri, owner and CEO of Rizzieri Salons, Spas, and Schools. Thank you, Frank, for taking the time to address our members today. We are looking forward to your comments. I would also like to thank the exclusive sponsor of our executive series, TD Bank, for their generosity and support. TD is a leader in our community in many ways. We sincerely appreciate their ongoing and strong enthusiasm for the Chamber to implement our mission to serve you, our valued members, especially during these unprecedented times. We thank our former Chamber board member, Robert E. Curley, South Jersey Market President, and our current board member from TD Bank, Damian G. Before I turn the program over to Damian and Frank, please allow me to cover a few housekeeping items. At the bottom of your audience console, you will see a chat feature. If you have any questions during the presentation, you can submit them in the chat and we will get to them during the Q&A portion of the event. An on-demand version of this presentation will be sent to all members later today and will also be available on the Chamber's website. With that, please allow me to welcome Damian G., Senior Vice President and Regional Vice President for Greater Philadelphia Lending Group of TD Bank, who will introduce our keynote speaker. Damian?
Thank you, Meredith. I'm delighted to be here today and thank the Chamber for providing us with another headline speaker. Rizzieri Salon was originally started in 1924 by Frank Rizzieri's grandfather, Franco Cipriati. Frank has been part of his family's business since the moment he was born, and in the 1990s, Frank moved into a leadership role within the organization. Today, the Rizzieri portfolio is comprised of 4 salons, 2 barbershops, 2 spas, a cosmetology and skincare school with locations in New Jersey and Florida, and management consulting company. Frank not only runs a very successful business enterprise, he is also a renowned editorial hairstylist and travels around the world. He co-founded a hair tool company called Our Session Pro Tools. His different businesses have won many awards, including the Global Salon Business Award for Excellence, and the business recognizing Rizzieri as one of the best run salon businesses in the world. Frank has also won North American Hairstyling Award 3 times, which is the highest honor bestowed to a hairstylist in all of North America. It is our honor to feature Frank Rizzieri today. Please join me in welcoming Frank.
How you doing? Thank you very much, Damian. Well, I want to first thank Christina, Meredith, and Damian, TD Bank, for the opportunity to speak and share my story. So what I'd like to do is just basically take you from the beginning. And I'll just take you from the beginning of how my family started and what we did, and just some history. My grandfather was a pioneer at the time. It was the 20s, and I remember as a kid talking to him, and he opened it was a barbering school at the time, and from there the school expanded or grew. He was in Philadelphia for a very short period of time, and then back in the 20s, he moved into Camden and then eventually into Haddonfield. My grandfather always had a thing, he was an entrepreneur at the time, and he did a lot of different things, and he was an opera singer, and he got into a lot of businesses from what he told me. I think the one that made it was the cosmetology business. He was also a mushroom farmer, and he also owned salons with one of his brothers, but cosmetology schools what stuck. 1924 is when we officially opened the school, so we're coming up to our 100th year anniversary, which is kind of, I think, monumental when you think about a family business that still owns the business, and we're coming up to 100 years. When my grandfather retired, my mom took over the business. My family, actually, my grandfather and my dad all migrated from the same part of Sicily called Catania. So my father came here from Italy. He couldn't speak any English. He had no family. He was an orphan, and he just literally stumbled upon my grandfather, and the connection was the same town in Italy. So my father started a salon in Runnymede, New Jersey, probably in the 60s. So it was about 1964. It was a very small salon. It was called Moncherie on the Black Horse Pike. And then, my parents had me, and then, snapshot, 20 years. And then I got involved in the business. And at the time I was becoming well known in the name of Rizzieri in the salon world. And the schools and the salon didn't represent it because we had a name called the House of Capri for the salons. And the school was called Maison de Paris. So I wanted to kind of modernize it. And that's when I changed everything to Rizzieri. My parents are still involved in the business. My mom still goes to the school. She teaches finger waves, which, if you know anything about hairdressing, finger waves is a dying art, but it's part of what you have to learn in cosmetology. So she actually comes in and teaches that. My father still works in the salon literally 7 days a week. I tell him all the time, you don't have to work as much, but I think he would not know what else to do if he wasn't cutting hair. And he's got such a charisma to him. So he teaches in the school 1 day a week, and he also cuts hair. The man works 7 days a week, so it's a little hard to tell him not to work. When I was a kid, I would really basically kind of come into the salon. And literally, when I say a kid, I was 6 years old. There was no such thing as like daycare or nanny or anything like that. So my parents just propped me in a corner, and I just literally like learned the business from scratch. I was really kind of a little bit of, in my parents' mind's eye, a little bit of a rebel, because my dad wanted me to do, you never, as a kid, and, I have children now, you don't want to listen to your parents. So my dad also had a garden center, and I was really loved that. And because when I would come to the salon, he would tell me what to do, and I really don't like to be told what to do. So I think he bankrupted the garden center just so I wouldn't be involved in it. But then I got the bug with hairdressing, and I really just kind of took it. I'm kind of an extremist, I took it to whatever umpteenth degree you can. So I worked super hard, and this was back in the 90s. I became really kind of well known in the industry. I won what we would consider like our Academy Award. It's called NAHA, North American Hairstyling Award. And I won that 3 times. And I just really kind of wanted to make a name for myself. I would work in New Jersey. I would drive to New York and do photo shoots. At the time, it was in the meatpacking district. And if any of you out there remember, the meatpacking district wasn't the glamour that it is today. It was literally a meatpacking. So with the trucks on the street and prostitutes on the corner, I would be doing test photo shoots to kind of build my portfolio. And I did that at the same time that I wanted to really change my family's business. And that's our first move to Marlton. And I condensed and consolidated everything to be more in sync. So we had a cosmetology school, we had a salon, we were the first to open a spa. And that was the one big kind of move that we had. And that was in 1999. And then around, 2006, we made the move to Voorhees, and we moved the school there. And then in the meantime, there was things like, there was mentioned the Global Salon Business Award, which is recognized just how salons operate. And I would probably be different because I've always tried to balance art and commerce, the art of the business, but at the same time, the commerce of running a business, which trying to keep your family roots, but also trying to run it like a business, which I have to tell you, I barely got through high school. So I never went to college. I say that I've learned my, master's and MBA in losing millions of dollars. So that's how I figured a lot of things out. So a lot of it was I was intuitive on what was going on in the industry. And I tried to surround myself with people that I always say that are smarter than me to help me run the business side of the business. So we had an opportunity after we bought our Marlton location to sell it. And I thought moving to the Morristown Mall at the time was a good opportunity. I still think it is. I know there's, COVID has changed a lot, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. But, we have in there, we've developed like a shop within shop concept. So we have our salon, our barber shop. We have the medical spa that we have a relationship with Dr. Wilcox and her son, Dimitri. And really was something really quite different. The barbershop was like real different. I kind of designed it like my grandfather's barbershop in the 1920s. And we've since expanded on that. I also, wanted to get it more into the Florida marketplace. So I bought my cousin's salon, and then I bought another salon. And, obviously now with COVID, some of the things are changing only cause, I think this time, and, I'll go into it a little bit more as we want to relook and kind of reflect on some of the things that we started. Everyone always says, like, what is it like working in a family business? And I think there's a lot of positives, but there's equally a lot of, I don't want to say negatives, but things that you just have to be very mindful of. And since I grew up in the business, I really know nothing else. I knew nothing else. But, there's always arguments. There's never a day off, and everybody always has an opinion. So, and if you're a strong opinion, I have a very strong opinion and a very strong personality. I'm more on the quiet side, but, I'm kind of like the duck, calm on the top, but very kind of active on the bottom with the feet moving fast. And so I always try to, me and my dad definitely have had our battles. But outside of that, there's a lot of, there's always a bond and a strength and you lean on one another, which has always been really great. But, a lot of people sometimes tell me, what is it like to work in a family business? I have, my son or my daughter that's in my business. I mean, I've learned a lot in the sense of, how I think. I mean, I have two boys, and I actually don't want them in my business. But if they're going to come into my business, they're going to do it the right way, which they're going to start like I did from scratch, and they're going to learn their way up. And I probably have them work for somebody else for a few years before they came into my operation. Some of the other things outside of, running the salons, I've always been an entrepreneur and a little bit of a tinkerer to things in my industry. And Damien had mentioned some of the things that I've done, but I always want to diversify who I was and what I've done. And 9 years ago, I had an idea with a curling iron. And I really stay in my lane. So obviously I wouldn't be the guy that's going to invent any, a new chair or table, even though I love architecture and I love design. So I kind of went through the process of learning how to develop a curling iron. And if you know me, like, I get very ingrained in everything. So I have to understand it at basically the basic level and work my way up, so I actually went to China. I saw the manufacturing, I saw the factory, I had somebody rip me off. I kind of really understood a lot about, how China works and how things work, shipping things overseas. I've learned a lot. That was one of my MBAs. I got it off the ground. It became very successful, but mainly in the salon world. It's more like a cult tool for hairdressers. And then from there, I developed a line of hair extensions, and I've been used a lot with manufacturers to develop lines for whether professional and or consumer use. So I have a really good understanding from my years of doing photo shoots and working with, TV commercials and art directors and conceptual things. I have a lot of experience, and I learned a lot on how to kind of bring a product to market. The other thing that was always very important to me is really like community involvement and giving back, because I believe in life that if you were given the ability to earn a good living and employ people, you should also help people that don't have certain opportunities. So we've always been pretty strong in the community. One of the things that I got involved with, and it was years ago, was Virtua Foundation Board. And I said, look, if I'm going to be on the Virtua Foundation Board, I actually have to do something that is mindful and meaningful to me. And, and women's causes and anything that help women out are very important to me. And I thought that women going through cancer was something that was really near and dear to my heart, because I've seen so many women go through cancer, lose their hair, and it's such a big part of their identity. I always felt like compelled to have like kind of a safe place to, where they can go and get a wig and feel comfortable through the process. So, we, and, I'm going to reach out to Paula Brown, because it never would have happened without her, but we helped open the cancer boutique. And so far we've raised over $250,000. And again, a big thank you and reach out to TD Bank, because they've been one of the biggest sponsors, and they've always been super, super supportive and raising money for the cause. We've had to actually close it right now with COVID, but I think we've been over 150 wigs that we've helped women, so when, it's all free to them. They go in, they have their head shaved, they get a head turban, or they get a wig, we help them style it. So it's been really good. I have to say it's something that I look at and say, wow, that was something that, was really helpful to the community and to people. So I talk a little bit about COVID, because I have to tell you, I mean, obviously, we're all business owners, and if there's anything that has ever turned you around and flipped you and threw you on your back and jumped on your back, and I always equate to things like I love to swim. I swim almost every day, whether it be in a pool, a lake, or an ocean, and I love to do triathlons. And I think sometimes, you get at that point where you're exhausted and you want to give up and you want to just kind of like stop, but you can't. Kind of COVID's kind of like that, I think, our industry, obviously hairdressing is, I always said, pre-recession proof. And I do believe that it is. But going through the process, I looked at one back in March when we had a furlough over 250 people. It was really difficult for me. I've never laid anyone off in my whole company. I kept a very small group of people. I have a really tight, great management team. And, little by little, we kind of worked through what we had to do with making sure how we were going to open the locations prior to having any guidelines from whether it be the governor or where we're governed by is the Division of Consumer Affairs. I always try to also look at like the silver lining and everything in life. For me, I've kind of want to go back to 10 years ago where I was, I've always been involved and I still do hair, but even more involved and not looking so more entrepreneurial and open more things up. I actually want to shed things. I've closed one of my locations in Florida. I have one that does well, so we have that. And just trying to shed all the things that I don't think are really necessary. But, and just kind of reflect back on what you have to do. I mean, I do know that the process to get here, a lot of people, whether it was like kind of like the calm before the storm. Again, I sometimes equate it to if you swim and you swim out in a really rough surf, getting out of the waves, sometimes not so much. And once you get way out there, you can almost kind of like coast. But when it gets rough and you got to come back in, that's when the real work begins and you're winded and you're tired. So I really wanted to really look at like, how do I take my industry, which for the most part, our local industry, I know all the local salon owners, and I said, what can it do to just get out there and talk about our industry? Because I found that nobody really fights for you unless you fight for yourself. And I'm talking about the salon industry and your business. So I was really good friends with a lot of salon owners. One Sunday morning, I get a call from Louis Christian, who owns Louis Christian Robert John Salon in Cherry Hill. And he said, hey, what are you doing with all the COVID stuff? And I said, I don't know, we're doing this, we're doing that. And I said, why don't we get together with the local salon community and just talk so we can all unify on what we do. So there's a sense of level of security and safety for when a guest comes into the salons. So we started like this, it's like South Jersey group. It started with like 12 or 15 salons. And, I'm like every week or every day somebody email me, can I be a part of it? Can I be a part of it? I think it got a little too big, but it was really good. We shared a lot of the stuff on how we would reopen, what we would do, how were we working with the PPE program at the time? How did we handle the PPE process with, buying everything and procuring it and storing it, and what prices did we get, all that kind of stuff. We also did the same thing with the school association and really worked really hard. And again, that's a real big reach out to Paula Brown because she's the lead of the local school association, and really working with them to try to get back up and running. I also tried to reach out to a lot of the people that we work with through the years, politicians. So what we did is, with Christina Reyna and some business leaders, I was part of our own college town hall, and that was with Andy Kim, and it was moderated by RCBC President Mike Kyochi. I might say that wrong. Sorry, Mike, if I did. And we partnered up with them, and there was a really good conversation. And I was really trying, mainly from Senator Andy Kim, Congressman, Andy Kim, was really trying to get him to understand the plight of small business, which I just learned now. I'm not a politician, nor do I ever want to be. But, they got a lot of stuff thrown at them. And unless you start, screaming loud, they might not know that they're helping you or hurting you on some of the things. So I was interviewed by numerous TV stations, and if you really know me, like I have no problem speaking in front of anybody. I'm not one to like say, oh, I got to be on TV, I got to talk. And I just was like, I said yes to everything, you know. I did a thing with CNBC Squawk Box and every kind of local, I think I did every local TV station, really talking about how we need to open, what we need to be safe, what we need to do. And I have to really reach out to a lot of the people that were really helpful on the congressional and local assemblymen. So Congressman Donald Norcross he's a great guy. He's very helpful. Congressman Andy Kim, Senator Jim Beach, Senator Troy Singleton also have been wonderful. Majority Leader Lou Greenwald. I mean, Lou has been great. And also Assemblyman Ryan Peters. We've reached out to every one of them. They were all really great with working with us. So, you know, I want to thank them all for all their help. When we had to get our businesses back up and running, you know, I think we scrubbed and cleaned, which we always had a really super clean operation, every inch of every part of the business. And, you know, I wanted to look at things that were super, so ductwork was re-cleaned. I got these air sanitation units with some with UV lights or with ionized air, whether they're in the ductwork or they're mobile units, just so everyone can really feel safe, and really established a really good PPE program that I felt would be visual enough for our guests and our students so they know that we're really taking, and I don't ever want to forget the amazing staff that I have, but also for them too. I mean, the safety and the sanitation costs were necessary, but they were very high. I mean, it's not just that. Now we're into it a month. It's the labor costs that go into it, because now we have temperature checkers. We have more people cleaning. So you got the cost of the goods, and then you have the cost of labor. And you're at 50% capacity, which, thank God, with our salons being big enough, I was able to maximize shifting and getting majority of the income back. I mean, I really worry about all the legal liabilities that are going to come out of COVID. I mean, I think that's kind of like the freight train that hasn't stopped yet. When it stops, it's going to pile up. Hopefully, I know there's some legal stuff that's in kind of in the Senate in New Jersey to help us with not being held accountable for whatever we're going to be, unfortunately, probably sued for, which is, you know, gets a little, you know, you always get a little nervous with that. Naturally, you know, you got to reach out to your state and local representatives to help you out. And like I said, you know, the labor costs have just been, you know, kind of crazy. I've tried to really use technology where, you know, I've got these really great scanners that, you know, are stationary. So for a sizable investment, it's just better over the long period of time. And it tracks the person's name. It takes a picture if you want. And, you know, you can know when somebody comes in. So it really helps out a lot. So like I said, I mean, after COVID, I'm really just going back to the basics. I'm going to take a 2-year hiatus of any new projects and see, and just really strengthen up my business. And hopefully, you know, it'll all be good. I mean, you know, everybody talks about, you know, will it close again? You know, I mean, that's something that we have to think about, and, you know, we're just going to have to go with it. I do really believe that, that a mask, you know, environment is very helpful. I think most of our guests have been very well received. They see what we're doing, and they see all the effort and energy that we've taken to keep things safe. I also believe that my staff has been really amazing. They've really gone through a lot to get to this point. Knowing that, just, I mean, at the end of the day, you know, not everybody wants to live and work in a mask, and certain rules and a lot of things that change. And that's the biggest thing that that I see now, are people just reevaluating who they are, what they do, and whether they leave my organization and move on or want to try something different. But this is just a time that I see a lot of people that's kind of what they really want to do. So, you know, look, I believe in our country, and I believe in my company. I believe that we will get through this and we will prevail. I do think that we're not through it yet, so we're going to have to just kind of what I would call just like push through. I think the most important thing that if you have something to say it to the right people, whether it be your local congressman or local leaders. They do listen. Doesn't mean that it's going to happen overnight. And sometimes things don't necessarily just go all in your direction, but you just got to constantly fight and keep the ship steady. So that's my story. I hope I wasn't too quick, and I hope that I didn't leave anything out, but obviously I'm open for any types of questions or anything like that.
Thank you so much, Frank. That was great. I just want to remind everybody that you could submit your questions in the chat, and we'll get to as many of them as we can. And while we wait for some of our audience members to submit some questions, I have a few. So if you wouldn't mind, Frank.
No?
What component of the Rizzieri portfolio do you think your grandfather would be most proud of or surprised by?
I think he would be surprised by the amount of people that we have work for us because, you know, we started, I mean, he had 4 employees. My dad at the House of Capri maybe had 10. And then, you know, 250 people, you know, is a lot. And I think the fact that he, you know, I went out and developed things that he would have probably wanted to do, you know, going out and see how things are made. I mean, and, you know, and I don't really talk about all the other things that I've done. I mean, I've worked with lots of celebrities. I've literally traveled the world and done photo shoots all over the world. So I've had a really great journey.
That's great. Just a little fun question. Of all the, you know, I know work with a lot of celebrities, as does your wife. Do you have favorite celebrities that you've had the opportunity to work with?
You know, I've learned one thing with working with celebrities is you're still the hired help.
Yeah.
I have to say it that way. You're not the celebrity. So I've always kept a pretty low profile with that. I have to say, out of all the people that I've been around, I mean, Paul McCartney was probably one of the nicest, genuine, down to earth people. And I found in celebrityism, you know, because you've got newer celebrities and you know, whole different levels. And some of the older celebrities, I hate to say older, my age older, they tend to be really down to earth. When they're comfortable, I always say when you're comfortable in your skin, you're pretty good. So I always just really liked him. And I thought Christy Turlington, I was always really super, super down to earth. And as a supermodel at the time, obviously we're talking, you know, and some of the other actresses, you know, they all have their quirkiness.
Yeah. So obviously you mentioned you have grown your staff significantly over, you know, the last nearly 100 years. How do you identify talent within the organization to develop, and what are the key characteristics of a successful employee in your company?
Well, the one good thing is we have the school. So we have a cosmetology school. So we're able to see new talent and, you know, and it's always, to me, it's a fit. So one, the new talent has to look like they fit in my organization. So I have time to look, you know. So that's one thing. So I'm an observer. When you come to the tech, whether you're a technician or you're an artist or you're a manager to me, are you a good person? You know, like, what are your morals? What do you really look at? How do you judge and lead people? You know, I think that's, to me, the most important thing, because they have to fit with who you are. It doesn't mean that they're wrong, but if you don't align, then you're never going to see eye to eye, and you're going to have a very hard time. Look, I've made a ton of bad hires, you know, and I always say it's still a 50-50 shot, because sometimes someone has an amazing resume, but it doesn't match the person, you know. And sometimes we make mistakes as owners. I speak for myself, is I hired somebody for one position and then I changed it on them. And then I was like, well, why aren't they good at that? Well, I mean, you know, I look back after they left, I'm like, well, I didn't hire them for that, you know? So that's, you know, I always say it's still a crapshoot no matter what.
How do you keep your employees motivated during such a challenging time in the industry, or how do you reward them for their commitment to staying on board with the organization?
Well, that's hard. I mean, you know, we have a very long-term group of employees that have been with us. I mean, our average employee's been with us over 15 years. you know, so we don't really have a lot of turnover, but we've definitely had some turnover coming out of COVID, in COVID, out of COVID. I think part of it is, you know, we've always treated everybody. I know me and my dad, I mean, I've always said we've taken less to make sure that our employees are happy and feel that they have a place to grow. And I always say, look, if you can't grow with me, then you shouldn't be here if you want to grow. I mean, but I think coming out of it, my expectations have changed. You know, I'm not normally a confrontational person, and sometimes I might say, I don't like that, but I'll walk by it. And, you know, now I'm a little bit pickier and a little bit more stringent on things. And I think that might have, you know, rocked some people, you know. But I always look at this, I always say to everybody, I'm not judging anyone, because the first person I judge is me, and I judge me the hardest. So I always look at any of the strengths or weaknesses in my organization to be my necessary thing that I either have to fix or change. So it has to start with me. So, and I think just people kind of wanted a change. So some things are just a little, everyone's world is a little rocked right now.
Mhm. So we have a comment from one of our listeners, just commending you for working with the other salons to open safely, and wanted to know if you're now talking with your team about the possibility of next time this happens and kind of planning for the future.
Well, I'm looking on how to plan for the future and how to operate my business. So my new plan is plan that it's going to be here for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
And if things change that were back to the way they were, when we always say, I don't know if that's going to be the way that it was, then that's good. But you know, the next time I'm going to look like we're in it and then we're not getting out of it. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to just retool everything that we do, really looking at how we operate, how we do things, how to simplify, and, you know, make sure that your balance sheet and your business looks really good. And I don't think any of the safety measures that we're doing in the salons and the school right now are going to change in the near future. So to me, this is the way it is. I don't look back now.
Great. Aside from adhering to the new safety restrictions, in what ways do you feel that COVID has forced the business to transform or maybe accelerated trends in the industry?
Well, obviously the businesses are transforming, and, you know, and I operate different businesses, but, you know, when you look at, you know, I think I'll talk about it from the operational side of my business. So, you know, do I need an office? Can we do things more, you know, that are, you know, Zoom and things like we're doing today? So the whole digital world, that's something that I want to really look more into. And how can I kind of change my business to, you know, sell things more online and do all that, things that I can kind of control. I'm not quite sure yet where some of the things on the education side are going to shake out. Yeah. You know, Zoom is great, but my business is a very, like, you have to touch hair, you have to be involved in it. So you can only do so much on Zoom. And, you know, we taught Zoom in the school. It was a little bit of a struggle for the older students, the ones that were pre-enrolled prior to COVID, because that's not what their mindset was. But the newer students that were enrolling after COVID have a whole different mindset. So, you know, I'm not sure yet where some of the innovation is going to be. Right now, I'm trying to just work from a stabilization point, and then I'll look to see what we can do to innovate, you know.
Okay, great. You mentioned the schools. Do you think that, you know, given the nature of the industry and the work, being in contact with people, do you think that this experience is going to change enrollment or have long-term impacts on an enrollment of people interested in pursuing a position in this industry?
No, because, you know, I think there's actually a lot of safety in what we do, because when you have a mask, your guests have a mask, you sanitize, you have a face shield. I mean, I got to tell you, you know, we're close to what a doctor's office is. You know, I think that there's a lot of upside to our industry because a lot of other industries have shrunk. They're not going to be there anymore. People are always going to have beauty related services, you know, and they're always going to want to get them. So I do believe that there will always be a need for the business. We just have to think differently on how we operate the business and what we do. So that's kind of, I think, some of the changes that are going to happen there. I do believe that there's a big positive and upside to the school industry because there's going to be a lot of people out of work and they need to be retooled. And some people like dealing with people, and doing hair might, or being a barber or esthetician might be a new journey for them.
A question from the audience. Somebody mentioned many industries, of course, have been decimated due to COVID-19. What would you say to a business owner that needs to rebuild from the ground up?
Yeah, that's a hard one. I thought that was, look, I put it at when the beginning, I'm like, all right, I'm going to close every one of my businesses. I'm going to start from scratch again. So I kind of get in my own head. So what did that mean for me was, okay, well, look, I'll lose every lease and start with a chair with one chair and myself, and I'll start over again. That's kind of like the way I was thinking about it. So I really believe that, I tell a lot of people that if I were 10 years older, I'd be at the end of most of my leases. I honestly don't think I would have opened a lot of my business because it just, the stretch and the risk and everything that we're going through is, it was worth it because I love the people that work for me. I love our clients that come in. I love our students. So I really felt very obligated to do it if we could. But, if you were sitting on the fringe, you might not want to be. Now, some of the things that I want to kind of diversify in a real estate development and some development of products. So I would say that if you have to retool and you got to start from scratch, start from the new scratch. Don't start from what you just left, because maybe that business model just doesn't work anymore.
So we have a question from somebody kind of in the entrepreneur space looking to start a business now. What do you think the biggest challenges now to open a business excluding COVID-19? So if someone is now looking to start a business, what do you think the biggest challenges in this day and age, I guess, is the question.
Well, I guess I look at it this way. If you're going to open a restaurant right now, that'd probably be not the right thing to do, because I don't think you're going to do well. I guess that one is always capital. Do you have the capital that you need to open the business? Is your business model strong enough, and what is it? But I think there's a hell of a lot of great opportunities because technology is becoming cheaper, rents and real estate are becoming cheaper. So there's a lot of good things. If you're a business that's going to rely on labor, that's going to be a little bit tougher. I think there's going to be a lot of open labor, but you got to just be careful on, are they still collecting and all the other things that you got to kind of, that make it a little harder to hire people. So I would say it just depends on the business,
And I know Rizzieri dealt with the Paycheck Protection Program like a lot of members. How did you find that process, the challenges that came along with it and the challenges that will continue?
Well, I have to say, we'll definitely give a shout out to Lee Shields at Friedman. He's my accountant. He helped me through it. And also Joe Sezzi, he was my old CFO. They really walked me through it because I would have never been able to handle it. We have a lot of different companies, so they really did an amazing job. And I think, I also have good lawyers, that helped me out. So I had so many good people that I have to say that the only part of the Paycheck Protection Program was my concern was the initial forgiveness period wasn't going to work for how we were opening our business. I was really thankful that it moved to the 24-week period because that's really what helped us because I had no control on when we can open. So, I have to say, we would be talking a different talk if that wasn't available.
The next question we have, how would you say your success has been the result of principles more than textbooks? And if you are willing to share, what faith underpinnings would you point to?
Well, I have to say, I've never been a textbook person. I've been kind of a little bit more of a street person. I've learned and that's also where I've made a lot of mistakes, but I've also learned a lot, I have just a few principles that I have to like the person if I work with them. And if I don't like them, I won't work with them. And I always say, treat people the way you want to be treated. That's all I ask. I'm fine if you're demanding. I'm fine if you're direct. That's the way I want to be. And that's what I expect. And I always say, never burn a bridge. Have tough conversations. And I hate tough conversations, but a lot of times you have to have them. And just be honest. If it doesn't work out, if it's not working out, The other thing is, if you're going to fail fast. Because, sometimes we get some things in our mind that, hey, I got to keep this open and I got to do it. And you're just bleeding money and So if you're going to fail, fail fast.
We have a lot of great comments coming through, just congratulating you on the way you've handled the current pandemic and your work for the Cancer Hair Boutique, which we'll make sure to share with you and Paula after the event. Are there any other areas, I guess, from a community perspective that you're interested in, serving, other populations, maybe aside from cancer patients, that you think there would be a natural tie-in with your business?
I just was looking from D. Smith, because I do want to answer this question, if you don't mind, because it has to do with African-American hair. I'm with D. I actually, years ago, went in partners with a woman to actually bring an African-American salon into my salon. It didn't work out, not because she's an amazing woman. They just wanted to move. I think that particular type of hair is amazing. I think it's artfully some of the most beautiful hair and the hardest hair to do until you're trained. So we absolutely train for it. And I absolutely believe in it. And I think it's a very important part of our industry. And, but to go back to your question, they're the kind of things that I want to look for, to look at, like kind of what I call it white space, areas that a lot of people in the industry aren't really looking to work around, and try to work around them even more. And I think that particular whole wig, textured hair, black hairstyling is so important. I'd like to really work on that a lot more and train it a lot more. It's very specialized though, so you really have to know what you're doing, and you have to really have the right people to do it. And some of the other things in the business with thinning hair. So I'm looking to develop my own product line. So I'm really kind of just going back real kind of what I call white space, that I want to just build my own kind of ecosystem, what I call it, whether it be product, trainings, teachings, different kind of business, what I would call them, kind of areas that a lot of people don't really look at. I hope that answered your question.
Great. I have one more question, if we don't have any other questions from the audience. If you could go back in time a year ago or 5 years ago, what advice would you give yourself in dealing with the road ahead?
I would probably have scaled back my ambition a little bit. I would have looked at a project a lot differently, and I would have been much more, okay, what is this in 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, 10 years? How does it drain cash? But how does it take resources of people? And that's the hard thing to quantify. It's the people power and the people brain power that you have. Can that take, as an entrepreneur, your dreams to the level that you need? And I think where I've misstepped is my ambition far exceeded what my capital, and whether it's money capital or people capital, I think that was a little bit of a stumbling block. So now I'm going to be far more selective and really put my process of looking at something far more under a lot more scrutiny of not just capital and not just me, the other people that make it go. And I think that's what's really, that's how that's the advice I would give myself.
That's great advice for all of us. So I just want to take the opportunity, Frank, to thank you again for taking time today to address our members, share a little bit about the history about Rizzieri Salon and Spa, and then also discuss how the business and the industry has adapted to the current climate under your incredible leadership. I want to thank Damien and our friends at TD Bank and all of you for tuning in. Just a quick reminder that our attendees will receive an email later today with a recording of this session as well as a survey. Please take a few minutes to provide feedback on this webinar and help us shape future programming. Just any final thoughts, Frank, before we wrap up?
No, I just want to say thank you so much. I appreciate your kindness and the generosity that you've given me to speak. You have an amazing organization with a lot of amazing people. And again, TD Bank, because you've been so amazing to my cause and also to me. And that's it. Yeah.
Thank you. We love having the Rizzieri team as part of our chamber family, especially Paula. She's so active with our organization, and she's a warm, friendly face and really helps connect us on the issues that your industry is facing and making sure we're getting that information back to the legislature. So just a shout out for Paula, not only for
No, she's amazing.
today's event, but always working with us. We adore her.
Truly amazing woman.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Frank, and
Thank
thank you everybody
Thank
for
you very
tuning
much.
in. If you have any additional questions, please submit them in the survey and we'll make sure we get them to Frank. Thank you again and have a great day.
Thanks. Have a great day. Bye.